everyone. Welcome to Soundhouse Church Online. Thanks for joining us today. Even though we can't be together in the same place right now, I'm really glad that we can still worship together as a church family from wherever we are. I'm so grateful for that, so let's praise. Your love is devoted, like a ring of solid gold, like a vow that is tested, like a covenant of old. Your love is enduring through the winter rain, beyond the horizon, with mercy for today. Faithful you have been, faithful you will be. You pledge yourself to me, and it's why I sing your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. You father the orphan, your kindness makes us whole. You shoulder our weakness, and your strength becomes our own. You're making me like you, clothing me in white, bringing beauty from ashes. For you will have your bride, free of all her guilt, and rid of all her shame, and known by her true name. And it's why I sing your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. You will be praised, you will be praised. With angels and saints we sing, worthy are you, Lord. You will be praised, you will be praised. With angels and saints we sing, worthy are you, Lord. And it's why I sing your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise, your praise, your praise.
Good morning, Soundhouse. I hope everybody's doing good this morning. And we know that this has been awkward for both of us. So we just want to let you know that we, as a staff, we think about you. We've been praying for you guys. And we just know that one day this is going to come to an end and we'll be back together again. We don't know when, but we're excited about that time when it does happen, because as much as I love talking to just one person sitting in front of me, we do miss seeing you guys and connecting with you guys. And so just to let you know, yes, there's been so many blessings in this time, and we hope that you're experiencing the same blessings where we're home, we're forced to kind of to be in a whole new situation, but I hope that like maybe what you've experienced, because I hear a lot of other people like are challenging themselves to do things they haven't done before, finding the time to focus on things that they haven't focused before, or even just kind of implementing new things in their life. And so we just hope this is a time of that for you and experiencing blessing, but also a time that you're really leaning into trusting God, that He's got His hands on your life and on this situation, and we're going to just trust Him. So I just want to also let you know a little bit about kind of the state of our church. I want to tell you, I know I have a lot of people have asked me that, how is the church? And you guys are very, like, obviously very concerned about the church and how we're doing. I want to let you know we're doing great. Like, us as a church, us as a staff, and the things that we've been able to do and really kind of transform the way we're doing church has been really exciting for us. Some stuff we're going to probably carry over when we get back meeting, which has been a blessing. But we're seeing all kinds of great connection in our church. We're seeing like all kinds of like great stories of people like letting us know how they've reached other people or people reaching out to us. Also financially, I know that's a concern. Like, we just want to say thank you because so many of you have just stayed committed to like keeping the church financially in really good step of where we want to be. And then so when this is over, we'll be able to just start right back up where we were. So thank you so much for being generous in this time, and thank you so much for taking these huge leaps of faith just to support in what God's doing through Soundhouse. And so another thing just want to let you know is if you could, just please email us, let us know how you're doing, and if there's anything that we can come alongside of you or at least help our church family. So many people have said, let me know when we need to help, and we'd love to be able to do that for you. Take any prayer requests that you may have, any needs that you have, essentials that you feel like, okay, like maybe it's getting very tight for you financially, let us know. We've had lots of people who've come around and said, we want to help with that kind of stuff. Or even jobs, if it's like you're needing something now. We have some people who, you know, over time may say, I have a job here and there that could be helpful to you. So I want to pray, and then let's get started. God, we thank you for today. God, we thank you for being able to cover this topic of reaching out. And God, I pray that that's on everybody's heart of just how we can reach to others in this time, especially, God, but even as a church as we move forward. And God, I ask you, just be with us. Thank you for the story we get to learn from today and maybe inspire a few of us to take steps we've never taken before as a church or even as individuals. We love you. Jesus.
Hello, everyone.
I have to just ask this question, and maybe you can think about it while you're at home here. Have you ever felt like the entire world was on your shoulders, right? Where you're carrying a weight that feels like no one understands. It's a weight you have to carry. It's responsibilities you just feel like maybe you're crushing, or even it's a circumstance that you're experiencing that feels heavy and weighted. I was thinking about that statue of Atlas, right? He's carrying the entire world on his shoulders, and that feels almost like what he does, right? And I feel like a lot of us can maybe relate to that feeling in a lot of different ways. I was reading, and sadly, I think a lot of us walk around with that weight. I was looking at like ridiculous little like cartoon things about that, and this one popped up here. I thought it was funny because a lot of us, even when we carry the weight around, and then we go home and then we put that weight on our family. And so, that type of thing is like, no matter what, it feels like the weight doesn't go away, and sometimes it burdens others that we don't want it to. And so there's a place I think sometimes we get where it almost feels like you want to give up and you want to quit and you feel overwhelmed and you don't know what to do. But maybe even, have you ever felt like you are pulled in a million directions, where you have so many responsibilities, so many obligations, you can't quite get your head straight? And I looked at this little Post-it note, and I can't tell you how many times I have written actually these words on a Post-it note, which is to do so many things. And I think that it's like so much you can't even get your head around it. Have you ever felt like that? Maybe that represents you. Have you ever felt like you're so busy, overwhelmed, and you absolutely just cannot see the solution? And sometimes it can feel like there's these blind spots we're not seeing. We feel like we're seeing it, but something's not going right. Things aren't working well, and there's blind spots there that we don't see, and we need help. And I think back to like when I first started learning about that in driving, and I think we're carrying this big load, but it was the most scariest thing for me to know that like I've got to stay focused here, but I know there's things I can't see, especially when I want to make a change, and so I need help. And those are the types of things I think we all experience that can actually build quite a bit of anxiety and quite a bit of worry and fear. And so today, in this series we're titling The Art of Reaching Out, And it is important that it is a bit of an art form, I think, when you are reaching to someone because of what you're encountering on the other side of it. It takes a certain level of skill, I think, to be able to do it. And we want to teach about that a little bit. There's a powerful story here that we're going to be able to read about how someone sees the blind spots in someone else and they're overwhelmed. And the person doesn't even realize they're overwhelmed, but knowing that it's going to damage them in the long term, and so they feel compelled to reach out. And so I titled this message, Blind Spots, Reaching Toward and Advising the Overwhelmed. Gallup just put this out not long ago, that 55% of adults actually, they said they experience during the day lots of stress. That's a ton of people to experience lots of stress throughout the day. 45% of Americans surveyed said that they worry a lot throughout the day. And even of those surveyed, most of them surveyed said that actually, before even the interview, they said that they were feeling lots of anger about what's happening. So they're frustrated, they didn't know what to do, and they're really mad about it. And so we know that people get stressed, and we know that people get overwhelmed, and we know that we need help. And, you know, it's completely normal to feel overwhelmed at times. It's completely normal to feel stressed. And it's completely normal to really ultimately, I think, feel worried. We have that. We're human. We all do that. I do that. You do that. But I think many times, and if you're a kind of person who feels like you are Atlas and you are carrying a weight on your shoulder and it is overwhelming, it feels like it never goes away and it almost feels like your lot in life now, then I think we need to talk to you. And I think we need to kind of maybe connect you with maybe something bigger than that. And also, for those who are hearing who go, I want to be able to reach out to someone and help, that there are people carrying weights around, and they're actually not that hard to see when you really start to look. You know, we have good reason not to ask for help, right? I'm going to read them all, and almost all of these I struggle with, and so I'm sure you're going to identify it. Why I don't ask for help. This is just, you know, I guess my diary. Pride. I cannot just lay down my pride sometimes and say, I need help. Feeling like a failure, huge for me, of like realizing like if I admit that I don't know what I'm doing, I feel like I'm failing at it. I'm the one who helps, big problem for me. I help people, I'm not in a position where they're helping me. So it has been a very hard process for me to ask for help from others. Even embarrassment of feeling like, it's embarrassing just to admit that I have a lack. Feeling like you're going to be judged. Feeling like, wow, I'm really putting myself out here vulnerably and exposed. Or just plain, you don't know what to do. And you just don't know who to ask and where to go. Right? If you've felt like this before, then you can imagine there's a lot of people like you out there. And if you felt like this before and you've experienced those things, and you want to reach out to someone, just remember there's a lot of yous out there if you want to help. But why I read that little list first from my little diary is like reaching out is an art form. Consider what I just said, pride, embarrassment, all these other things. When you're reaching to someone else, a lot of times people fumble the ball on the way to reaching because they're not sensitive to those types of things. And so I just wrote down a little list I want to read to you. To reach out as an art form, you must really care about helping them. It comes across as disingenuous when you're reaching out and you really don't care, but maybe you want to mark a good Christian box, right? You must approach it with humility. So coming in like you're in charge is not the way to come in when you want to reach out to someone. You have to come into it with humility. You must stop trying to save people. You have to help people and equip people, not save people. That's Jesus' job. You must be willing to handle the response when they maybe don't want your help. And you have to be okay with that. That's not where they're at. You must find out what they need. Actually what they're needing, what they're missing, right? And you got to help them see some blind spots. And that's tough when you want to point out a blind spot. It takes courage to do it because you're not exactly sure if they can see that blind spot or want to see it. You got to be willing to roll up your sleeves for a bit. You're not going to do the work for them, but you're going to have to roll up your sleeves and kind of get dirty a little bit with them in the work. And so I really want to just take a second. I'm going to read a passage. I'm going to teach out of this passage. And it's a perfect example of how this is done, the art of reaching out to someone who can't quite see the blind spots happening. Now, this story is about Moses. This story is about his father-in-law reaching out, which is difficult in itself that your father-in-law is trying to reach out to help you. And so you have to walk carefully. But you got to think about Moses' situation. He doesn't realize how much over his head he is is that he went from being in the palaces in Egypt to having probably some authority to having an HR situation he handled, which he ended up, instead of disciplining the guy, he ended up murdering the guy. And then he runs, and then he tends to sheep. That's his biggest responsibility for 40 years. And so then all of a sudden God meets God. God leads him to leading millions of people. Now he's leading millions of people. The guy's way out of his league. He has a great calling and a responsibility, but he finds himself in a place he doesn't know quite what to do. And so God brings somebody in his life who's willing to reach out to him. And what happens is they meet. Jethro, his father-in-law, travels, meets him in the wilderness where Moses is at the mountain of God. And he as soon as he sees Moses, they instantly catch up and say, how are you doing? And checking on his welfare, which is something important Jethro did. And then Jethro hears about what Moses has done or what God's done there and rejoices with him of the things that are working well, right? So just remember those three things. But I want to read here and just pick up in the story. And it says this, like after that initial greeting, it says, the next day Moses sat as judge before the people, while he stood around him, Jethro, from morning until evening. Now Jethro stands by and watches Moses do his job, okay? And when Moses, his father-in-law, saw all that he was doing for the people, he said, what is this that you're doing for the people? Why do you sit alone? Why are all the people standing around you from morning till evening? Now, here's the dialogue that happens. Moses then says, well, he wants to answer him. And Moses said to his father-in-law, because the people come to me to inquire of God. When they have a dispute, they come to me, and I decide between one person and the other. And I make known to them the statutes and instructions of God. Moses' father-in-law said to him, what you are doing is not good. Now, he sees a blind spot, and he points out the blind spot. You will surely wear yourself out, both you and these people with you. For the task is too heavy for you. You cannot do it alone. Now listen to me. I will give you counsel, and God will be with you. You should represent the people before God, and you should bring their cases before God and teach them. Yes, the statutes and instructions. These are good things you're doing, Moses, and make them known the way that they should go. You should also look for able men among the people, men who fear God and are trustworthy and hate dishonest gain, such men over them as officers at all times. Let them bring every important case to you, though, Moses, but decide every minor case themselves. So it will be easier for you, and they will be able to bear the burden with you. This is awesome advice for someone who's overwhelming, can't quite see their blind spot. If you do this, and God commands you, you will be able to endure all these people will go their homes in peace. So Moses listened to his father-in-law and did what he had said. Moses chose able men from Israel, appointed them as heads over the people, as officers of thousands and hundreds and fifties and tens. And they judged the people at all times. Hard cases they brought to Moses, but minor cases they decided themselves. Then Moses let his father-in-law depart, and he went back to his own country. Now, Moses was able to sustain this for so long, so many years that they needed as they were in the wilderness before they were able to go into the promised land. That piece of advice, that blind spot pointed out, sustained the people and sustained Moses. And I want to ask maybe for you, like, what do you see in the story for yourself? When you read this story, what stands out to you? I want to just kind of share, like, when I read a story like this in Scripture, I typically will go, okay, what's standing out to me? What am I seeing here as a pattern? What's something I can take myself? And so I want to give that to you today, what I see. First thing is Jethro came to Moses. When you're looking at reaching out to someone in the art form of it, he went to where Moses was at. He didn't ask Moses to come to him. He went to where Moses was at, wanted to see Moses' context and the people's context. In order to be available to advise, you have to be able to do that. Right here, when it says, like, Moses' father-in-law came into the wilderness where Moses was encamped. That's important. We tend to forget that, you know what, like, we can look from afar, but once you're in where someone's at, you get a much better understanding. I think advice from afar is, and disconnected advice like that, it doesn't go far for somebody. It's just a good idea, but until you know what they're experiencing. We had a situation like this where when we first started the church, we didn't really know anybody, and we weren't going to appoint elders. And so I had two advisors, one in Michigan, one in Texas, who were trusted voices in my life, and they were called translocal elders. But I started to get uncomfortable because every time I said, I think we should do this at Sound House, they didn't know Sound House. And they say, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. They approved lots of bad ideas because I needed someone to say, I don't think that works here, or we should ask more questions about that, until we appointed local elders. And it slowed things down, and it helped the process because they're in the context of the church, which we're so blessed to have them. The second thing Jethro did as far as reaching out is he asked about Moses. How are you holding up, Moses? How's your welfare? How's things going? And I think it's important. They asked each other about the other's welfare. I think reaching out is first understanding somebody and how they're feeling, what's going on. So quickly, we jump to solution before we understand the problem and what's going on with that person. Have you ever gotten help before when someone listened to you? They did something, but it wasn't what you needed. It was like, I'm overwhelmed, I'm stressed, I just don't feel like I can get ahead, but I also I need more time for myself, but someone comes and cleans your house for you. Where really what they needed to do is allow you, if they wanted to help and reach out, they would have heard that, wow, you need alone time. You need to be able to get out. Cleaning the house wasn't what they needed, right? So we have sometimes where we don't listen, but if you're going to reach out, you got to really listen and feel where they're at and hear the need. The third thing Jethro does is he rejoices with the wins that are happening. A lot of times we end up just looking just at the problem and we don't celebrate the wins because we have to be able to do that. Otherwise, we can't. Being able to hold both is so important. If we let one go, it just all feels helpless and hopeless to them. And like I said, Jethro rejoiced for all the good, right? He obviously probably saw things that weren't, but he rejoiced for all the good. I think it's easy to highlight problems, and especially when you're a problem solver. But you got to rejoice in the good. It's so important. I learned this so much when I've been hired at many different youth ministries. They would come in and say, what's everything you see going on? And a couple times, I went in and just laid out all of the things I would change. And it became discouraging to actually the staff I was going to lead. And they just felt like, wow, everything we've done is not good, and we failed at this. And then I learned that we needed to make a shift and actually give them positive feedback and let them know these are some really good things, and we're going to make some changes here. Now let's go really quick to the problem, right? Jethro, when he watched and observed Moses, the important thing, though, is he was with him all day, watching what he did. And one of the things that you do, the fourth thing that when you reach out, is you observe. You just stand by and you watch. It says, when Moses' father-in-law saw all that he was doing for the people, right, he stood back, he watched, and then he began to deal with the issue. But before charging in with all the advice, take the time to actually observe what's happening. There's this great show called The Prophet, and it's a guy who comes in, sees a struggling business, wants to help it. In the first half of the episode, he just sits back and he watches and he observes. And he just sees what's going on, the dynamics, and then he comes with solutions. That's a really great thing to do because then you actually know what to bring to the table. Number 5 is that Jethro asked key questions. Now listen to this. He says, what is it that you're doing here for the people? He wants to know. And why do you sit alone? The what and the why are so important to ask when you're going to come around somebody and you're going to reach out, and this art form is what and why are you doing that? And I think the what and why, they bring profound advice on the back end of that because you have to understand why they're doing it and also what they're doing. And you have to understand both. Jethro, number 6, he understood the problem. He said, what you're doing is not good. I see that there's a difference. Here's the blind spot. I understand the problem. Moses, you don't see this. And he says why it's a blind spot. You're going to wear yourself out and you don't realize this. You're going to wear the people out. You won't be able to sustain this movement God's calling you into. And I think reaching out is the way in seeing right when you're seeing what's causing the problem. You just see the problem. You see what's causing the problem and the effect of that problem. So someone can understand that, like, if you play this all the way out, it could be damaging for what you're trying to do, and it will increase the overwhelm. Blind spots are hard to see until they're too late for some people. But so you need to have somebody in your life pointing them out. And if you're reaching out, you got to be looking for those things that they don't see. It's no good to point out the obvious. My wife is a backseat driver, 100%. I used to get so frustrated because it just challenged my ego. You know what I mean? But what I've realized is that as hard it is to have a backseat driver, she has saved me from so many accidents that I'm too prideful to admit that she did. Because every time I'm going to turn, she looks too, and I'm like, I got this. But really, I can't tell you how many times I'm going after I looked, and she's like, you got to stop. Like, no, you're going to hit a car. Having an extra set of eyes in your life in your overwhelm is so important to have in your life, but we tend to kind of let our ego get in the way. The last thing Jethro does here is all the Jethro's you shoulds. You shoulds are hard to hear, right? I don't like hearing them, but listen to how he says it. He doesn't challenge why, really Moses' whole why he's doing it, to bring the people to God, and he doesn't challenge his motives. He doesn't challenge any of these things like that. He just says you should in a way of like, there's some things you got to change, Moses, here, and I'm just telling you in a very direct way. He says you should represent the people before God. You should do that, Moses. It's a good thing that you have going on. And you should bring their cases to God. You should teach them like you're doing, Moses, right? Affirming his passion or his calling, right? You should instruct them. But then here's what he also says, though. You should also look for able people among the people to help you. You should do all those things that you're passionate about, the things that is your calling, or the things that you're doing well. But you should also do this. It's not the blind spot. Good advice affirms what's going on good. It does. It'll affirm it, and it also confirms what's not going well. And so you'll know it when you feel it. And if you're reaching out to someone, Jethro gives us these incredible steps of really how to reach out to someone in this art form of reaching out. You know, you shoulds are so tough. I'm not a conference guy. Like, I like conferences, like church conferences, but typically what I realize is they're not in my context. They don't understand. These are really, really good things just to think about, but generally it worked for them in their place, and a lot of you shoulds. You hear a lot of you shoulds if you've ever been at one of these conferences or one that you go to. And at the end of the day, they don't understand where I'm at, my context, and who I am. And so I have found that I kind of walk out with there's a contextual problem here. What Jethro did is he placed himself there. He observed. He understood what Moses was dealing with. He came along him. He complimented what he was doing well. And then at the end of the day, he gave him also you shoulds and identified blind spots and said, here's why you need to do these, because I'm concerned about the long term. Now, if you're overwhelmed, I pray you get a Jethro type of person in your life. And if you're a person who is a Jethro, don't sit idly by, because, listen, you understand what that person may be going to. Look for the person with the atlas on their back and find them and go out and reach out to them and work these steps, I think, essentially like Jethro models for us of the art of reaching out, right? And I think what's important is at the end of the day, when Jethro finished his job, watched Moses thrive, he went home. He didn't stay and manage everything for Moses. He was there for a season, and he went home. And I think this is a beautiful story and how we do that. And so my encouragement to you this week is I have a few. I think you should definitely pray. God, who in my life is a Moses? And how can I be a Jethro in their life? Just pray. Holy Spirit, reveal this person to me. Help me see these people carrying this like atlas on their back, the world on their shoulders. And I think it's important to do that, those who need help. And I would say take a risk to reach out. It's okay to do that, just to even ask how they're doing. I have Guy King, who's one of our elders. He texts me all the time, how are you doing? Sometimes I've lied to Guy and said I'm doing fine when I wasn't doing fine, right? I just felt like those pride, the ego, all that stuff. And there's times where I share with him and he comes right alongside with me, and he just did it again yesterday. Those type of people are so important. Take the risk like my friend Guy does. And think of one person that you could be a Jethro to. Think of just one person, right? I love this quote, you have not lived until you have done something for someone who can never repay you again. And that's important. Like, they may not repay you if you're in Moses' position. He could repay Jethro. But the satisfaction was in just knowing that he could come alongside someone and help someone with the overwhelm. And there's so much joy in that. That's why you have to have the heart to want to help, right? And if you're overwhelmed, this is my last thing. If you're overwhelmed, don't wait for a Jethro to come into your life. Reach out and find that person and ask them to come help. Don't be so prideful. I struggle with this too, but it's important. You'll watch your life and the burden that you carry might be able to be eased, and everyone around you will experience the joy of that for you. So let's pray. God, we thank you so much for today. God, I ask that you help us as people, as your people, to not only continually trust in you, but trust in the process you are bringing in our life. I ask that you bring Jethro's types into our life who are reaching out to us. And God, I ask that we have a humble heart to receive help in those times of overwhelm. God, those who are just feels like it's crushing and stressed and struggling and worried, God, I ask that you just bring peace and comfort into their life, God, and bring those into their life, God, that can help ease that burden or see blind spots in them. God, we love you. We thank you. Be with us this week. Be with us with some of these challenges this week that we ourselves are going to take on. And God, we love you. Thank you for our people, and thank you for Sound House. And thank you for your hand on our life. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you, guys. Have a good week. See you next week.
Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Jesus, a name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. We live for you. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are, and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. We live for you. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are, and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. And I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation, and I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken, and I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation, and I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are, and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those